Institute in 2017 to provide housing for our unsheltered residents here in the city of Seattle. I'm thrilled to be here today to announce that we are expanding this site to provide another 29 homes for residents. This is a really key structure for us to be able to provide those on the street with some way to get into permanent housing and supportive services. I really want to give a shout out to our partners here. Obviously, the Low Income Housing Institute, and Sharon Lee will be speaking next. Councilmember Andrew Lewis has been a long-time supporter of this and worked with me on getting this expansion, but this also has huge community support. The Queen Anne and Magnolia communities have embraced this tiny house village, and even before when it was over in Ballard. They have been wonderful supporters and really shows what can happen when residents and government come together to solve problems. This is not a permanent solution for homelessness, but it is a very important first step. So I'm really thrilled that the Port of Seattle has been able to step up in this way. We've actually never done this before. This is the very first tiny house village on any port property in any port in Washington state. I'm really proud of our Port Commission for having authorized this. With that, I'd love to turn it over to Sharon Lee, our great partner with Lehigh. Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon Lee, Director of Lehigh Low Income Housing Institute. You know, it wasn't that long ago we actually had commissioners paint and do work on some of the tiny houses. And by the way, there's another opportunity coming up with the 29 new tiny houses. We're going to ask the commissioners to come out again and help us and have a paint party and have a volunteer day. This is really phenomenal. We are so happy that the port and the commissioners have allowed this land to be used repeatedly. Every time we've gone to the commission, we've actually had residents here that have appeared before the port commission meetings, and the votes have been unanimous to extend the lease with the city of Seattle. So we are so delighted. This particular village, right now we have 50 men and women, and we also have 3 children. We are so fortunate because the Human Service Department gives us funding for the utilities, for operations, and for staffing, and most importantly for case managers. We have case managers that help move people into permanent housing, help them fill out job applications, housing applications, income support, education, healthcare. The Mayor Durkin recently, through the Office of Housing, gave us bridge financing to purchase a beautiful, beautiful market rate apartment building on Capitol Hill, which is the Clay Apartments. And this weekend, we moved 6 people from Interbay into permanent housing. And our speaker, one of our speakers, I'm going to introduce Bob Williamson. He has lived here, and prior to that, he was homeless living in a tent. And he's the first to move into the Clay Apartments. So we are so delighted that he could join us today and talk about his experience. Again, I want to say that we're going to have 75 tiny houses. And so this is going to make a huge difference. But the homeless, unsheltered population in Seattle is like 4,000. And so we actually need to double the number of tiny house villages. And we have a champion, which is Councilmember Andrew Lewis, who represents this district. And he has a new campaign, It Takes a Village, because it does take a village to get this going. And we want to thank him and also Senator Frock and State Representative Frank Chop, because they added $2 million in the state budget specifically for more tiny house villages in Seattle. So that will still be forthcoming. And we would like to talk to the port about additional sites. No. We know you own a lot of property, and we're happy to do this again and again. Thank you. So I want to introduce Bob Williamson.
My name is Bob Williamson, and I was a long-time camper here, and I was what they called an elder, you know? And not just because of my age, but because of how long I was here. But I was working full time, and if it wasn't for Lehigh and a place like this, I would have never been able to move into permanent housing. Because having a structure to where I had some place to come home every day, get my rest, and that kind of thing, it saved my life is what it did, And all I can say is they need more places like this for people to get their crap together, per se. But I can't say enough of this place. I've moved into the clay apartments now, and I couldn't be happier. I could not be happier. It came right as I retired too. I'm retired. I've spent 53 years of my life working. I think it's time, at 65 years old, I stopped working. I'm sorry, I've just had enough. But I'm really happy with the way this all turned out for me. And it is a place for people to get their crap together and get on with their lives. They have a chance. So I'd like to say thank you, Sharon, for everything they've done for me. And thanks to the city, the taxpayers, and for everything that they've helped put us through. The volunteers that built these places. That means a lot. I've been in some states that they wouldn't even bother to put you. They wouldn't even let you sleep in a tent in their city. So I can't say enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Janice Raven. I'm on the Board of Trustees of the Magnolia Community Council, and I've also been on the Community Advisory Council for Interbay Village and Tent City 5 before that. So in 2015, when the city put forward the ordinance for sanctioned encampments, they included a community advisory committee. And honestly, I'm going to give you a little backstory now. It was a little bit like meeting the in-laws for the first time. You go into it with the best of intentions. It was the way for the community and the sanctioned encampment to be a community. So it's like meeting the in-laws. You go into it with the best of intentions. You don't really know what to expect. And I have to say that the outcomes have been so positive for the Magnolia community. The Ecumenical Council, the churches on Queen Anne and Magnolia, prior to this, really hadn't talked. The churches within Magnolia hadn't really talked to each other. And now the sanctioned encampment gave them an opportunity to meet and provide services in a direct way to people who live here. The Starbucks, back when we had the encampment on Dravis, when it was Tent City 5, the Starbucks that was on Dravis, both of them are no longer there, got an award for leadership and how they treated their customers. They wouldn't have had the opportunity to have so many homeless customers to treat well, and they became an exemplar for the rest of corporate. When the ordinance was written, there was a 2-year deadline for the encampment to be in place, and they had a rule that it had to go to a different community. Our Magnolia Community Council said, no way. We've spent 2 years building up goodwill. We've spent 2 years building up relationships. We want to keep them here. And the problem was finding a place for them to go. And that's where leaders like Stephanie Bowman and the Port of Seattle stepped up. We asked the impossible. Our Magnolia Community Council exploited every connection that we had. We knew that this land was here and unused, and we asked the question, why can't it go here? It's close to transportation, and Commissioner Bowman got them to yes. So the leadership made the impossible possible, and now they're here for a while, and we couldn't be happier. So I'm really honored to serve on the Magnolia Community Council, on the Community Advisory Committee with my fellow committee members, Ellen Monred, Jan Monte, Sue Olsen, and if there's anybody else I'm forgetting, sorry. So thank you. Thank you. And Commissioner,
Hi, well, I really appreciate everything that the folks behind me have said up to this point. I don't really have that much to add except to say that visually right here, this is what it looks like for us to come together and solve the crisis of homelessness that we're experiencing in Seattle and King County. Back in, gosh, I think it was December now, when I called Commissioner Bowman to say, look, there's some land here that's around that Interbay Tiny House Village. Could we expand it? Could we build on it? The community supports it. The community likes it. We know that we got people like Bob who's talked about his path to the clay apartments that started when Bob was living homeless, got a place in this village that gave Bob the platform he needed to get into the clay apartments and to have the stability and the dignity that all of us take for granted, but that isn't available to everybody in our community. This place did that. And in more than one way, it takes a village. And we can summon together a collective effort as neighbors to confront this challenge together and not do it in silos, not do it separately. Because communities like this don't come together through the actions of any one person. It comes from Stephanie leading on the port, getting the port into the business of hosting tiny house villages, something that the port has never done up to this point, but thanks to Commissioner Bowman's leadership, they have. Thank you, Commissioner Bowman, for that great servant leadership. It takes people like Jan over here, who Janice just referred to, who spends her weekend putting together and building the care packages that sustain the folks that live in the tiny house villages through her volunteerism, because she wants to help. She wants to be part of the solution. Thank you, Jan, for your service. Thank you for doing that and organizing your community. It takes people in the private sector who have come together and seen the model that we're trying to cultivate and said, we will put private philanthropy to match the public taxpayer commitment to make this a reality. So here's our task going forward from this meeting today. We're not just going to expand this village. We're going to keep expanding these villages until the problem of homelessness, the crisis that we're facing in this community, is ultimately finally resolved. And we can do that, and we can do it together. So thank you so much for inviting me down here, and really appreciate that this is the first of what I hope will be many events like this to break ground, to announce that there's going to be new shelter available for people in our community who are currently given no other option but to be our neighbors in tents. I want them to be my neighbor here in my district, in District 7, in the tiny house villages that we're building together so that we can all be part of a community. It takes a village, and I look forward to more of these events in the coming months. So thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Jan Monte, and I'm a longtime resident of Magnolia. I've lived here since the 80s, which means that I know this neighborhood really well. And I've seen it come together around supporting this village, particularly through the church that I attend, which is Church of the Ascension in Magnolia. There is a community group of other churches. We meet together. We started an ecumenical group, and one of our projects is to support this village and others like it. We've been bringing food for a long time, clothing. Now, if anybody doesn't have anything else to do on Sunday, Andrew Lewis said he might come. We're going to be assembling welcome bags at the church after the service for the new villages that are going to be forming soon. So there's one in Skyway and there's one in Aurora. We're going to assemble 50. We've got a list of stuff that goes in the bag. So if you want to help with that, we'd love to have you at 11 o'clock, Church of the Ascension. And I want to thank all the people that made this possible. The port, thank you. Our Commissioner, Andrew Lewis, thank you. Thank you.
I forgot to mention that Magnolia Community Council is going to be building one of these tiny cabins. We've approved the donation. We're just waiting for it to go in. Sorry.
My name is Sue Olsen, and I have also lived in Magnolia for almost 50 years now. And at the very beginning, my church, the Magnolia United Church of Christ, decided that this group of folks that moved into the very first Tent City 5 is what it was called in those days, that they had become our neighbors, and so we needed to become the best neighbors that they could possibly know. And our involvement with now the village, has been very deep and very long-standing, and we're really excited about the involvement that we have. We look forward to continuing having a big part in the expansion, and maybe with coordinating with the Magnolia Community Council to help with, in some way, with a new tiny cabin or 3 or 4. All of the churches and the ecumenical group are committed to continuing our involvement to be a part of this solution to homelessness. Thank you all who have aided in that.
Good afternoon. I'm Ellen Monrad. I'm chairman of the Queen Anne Community Council, and although this site is physically located on the Magnolia side of 15th, Queen Anne has supported it since day one. And I must say, the first time I ever had a tour, that when it was located behind the QFC on Dravis, this is a far step upward. At that time, all I could hear were the wind and the tents making a horrible racket. Now it reminds me of a small village in the Netherlands or in Norway, and I'm very proud to say that Queen Anne Community Council will continue to support this village. Thank you.
I'll just wrap it up. All right, thank you everybody for coming. Really appreciate all the support. Again, great partnership with Councilmember Andrew Lewis, who's been a champion from the beginning, Lehigh, the City of Seattle, and most importantly, our community members. Thank you all for being here today.
You're good. The one other thing, thank you all. Sorry to wake you this afternoon. Josh also wakes me.